Welcome to the Chaos Antidote, a leadership podcast hosted by Jason E. Neal, author of Accidentally Aligned: How Leaders Create Value in Chaos. Through these episodes, we will be exploring real-world problems and applying solutions that reduce your chaos and help you to become accidentally aligned. Hi everyone, welcome to the Chaos Antidote. This is Jason E. Neal, author of the book Accidentally Aligned. If you haven't picked this book up, I encourage you to go grab it on Amazon. It's available on Kindle and now Audible. So for all the folks that are going to work and driving in your car, or maybe you're in a plant and you're looking for something to listen to, this is a good one. So I would pick this one up. This is the podcast where we cut through the noise of daily operations and focus on what actually moves the needle for leaders who want to recreate or want to create value in your operations. So that's what we're going to try to do today. If you've been following along and watching my other videos, first off, I want to say thank you. We added over 400 subscribers last week to this channel, which is just wonderful. It's so encouraging. I work a full-time job, have a lot of responsibilities. And I do this in addition, writing these books, doing these podcasts, YouTube channels. So it takes a lot of time, and it's very inspirational to me when we pick up subscribers. So thank you to everyone that joined this week. I'm really thankful that you're finding this valuable. And if you haven't done that and you want to stay up to speed with what we're talking about, go down there, click the subscribe button. We would love to have you be here, be a part of this group. If you followed along on my journey and where I started in manufacturing plants. I've been doing this about 25 years. Everything has felt like controlled chaos in my life. There are a lot of frustrated teams, a lot of metrics that just wouldn't budge. We didn't know what to do with them. We were trying our very best. We had a lot of phrases we would use, a lot of things that we would try to do, and we just didn't. We weren't making progress, and very frustrated. But when you think about the things that I have struggled with most in my life, and with transformation and with people, when I took over one of the largest engine manufacturing operations in aerospace, it was huge, and I really didn't know what to do. I was actually very scared. I remember a lot of people were saying, wow, you didn't know what you got into, you've made a mistake, and it made me nervous. I didn't tell them that, but it was that negative feedback of, wow, you've really made a mistake. And I thought, maybe this is bigger than me, maybe this is bigger than the things that I'm used to doing or know how to do. And it was scary. And I hear that from a lot of people. They're like, I'm doing this and I'm scared. And we don't say that to each other. We very rarely will say it to a trusted mentor, because when we arm people with that fuel, they're afraid, right? It gives people a lever over us to attack us or to destroy us. But look, it's a very real thing. And I didn't tell people when I acted like I had things under control. I acted like things were fine, because I didn't want to set a precedence of people knowing that I didn't have things under control, or that things were beyond me or beyond what we were capable of doing. And I think leaders do that quite often. But I just want to take a moment to tell you that's a very normal feeling, and it won't always be there. You'll probably always be afraid of things. I think real growth happens when you're not always afraid of the same things. So the things that I was afraid of 20 years ago, I'm not afraid of those things today. I don't even think about them really. They've really just become second nature. It doesn't bother me to get up in front of 1,500, 2,000 people and deliver a speech. And I was sharing with a senior leader the other day when I said, how did you get up in front of that group and just deliver that and that message? And I said, when I started learning how to speak publicly, and I would get up and I would make speeches, there was only a couple hundred people back then, maybe 100, but they would heckle me when I would be I'd be saying things. I'd say, this is what we'd like to do with our engine line, and I'd like to hear your thoughts and feedback. And they would just yell things at me from the crowd, very, very bad things. And I formed that thick skin and early. And now when I get up and I talk and people clap, I'm like, wow, this is easy, because they're just clapping, right? And even if they were to heckle me, it wouldn't be the end of the world because I've been through that, right? And that's what I mean when I say like the fear is normal. The fear shows you care. If you weren't afraid, I would be concerned that you didn't care. And there's an element of that that's very normal. But I want to share that today because I've been getting that feedback. I get a lot of folks that reach out to me and they'll ask me questions like this, and hey, you just seem so calm, you seem like you have this under control, and how do I get to be like you? Don't be like me, be like you, right? We all have a value to bring to the world, and it's different. There's a voice that I bring, there's a voice that you're going to bring. They're different, and that's okay. They're supposed to be different. We all have a purpose that we're supposed to bring to this world, so don't try to be like me. Try to be like you, and every day try to be a better version of you than you were yesterday. And that's how I live my life. I compete with myself, and I ask myself, yesterday I didn't make that phone call. Maybe I was tired, or maybe I didn't face into that thing like I should have. But I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to let that rule over me today. I've got a second breath now, and I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to make that call. I know it's not going to be pleasant. I know it's not something I would like to do, but out of discipline and me forming a discipline and being a better leader, I'm going to do that today. And so I do that constantly every single day. And that's how you erase fear, because you build confidence. You begin to get reps in, right? As Shingo tells us, it's your method times your repetition that builds familiarity. And that's what we're trying to do, is build that confidence or that familiarity so that we say, I've done this 37 times, and that maybe half of the times it was bad and half the times that it was good, but it wasn't always bad. So I'm not going to be afraid of this and assume it's always going to be bad. But this I wanted to give that kickoff before we even get into the material today. I wanted to share that because I am hearing that from folks that are reaching out to me and asking me those questions. One last thing I'll add on that topic. One of the things that builds confidence and that removes some of that fear is like I said, repetition. I had a senior leader ask me maybe a year ago. They said, how do we build leaders? Which is kind of weird. They said like you, and I don't think I'm God's gift of leadership in any way, shape, or form, which I thought was kind of funny, because I don't think we build leaders like me. I think we need to build leaders like leaders, right? My sensei used to tell me, people need what they need, right? And we're all different. We need different things. The things that I need will not be the things that you need, and vice versa. But my answer was this. I said, I don't have a definitive answer. It's not like I can tell you if you do these things, this will happen. But my life, the reason I am the way that I am, the path that has brought me here, is because I've been subjected to a lot of really difficult things, and there was no one to help me, and I was very alone. And I learned in those times, they were very dark times, I learned lessons that no one could have taught me. I just learned them through failure and through pain and grief and stress and all of the above. But that's not the solution either, because if you drop two people into that same situation, one will come out hard and one will come out soft. And I don't know why I came out soft. I don't know why that happened. Because I've seen there were other people that walked right along with me, and they hate the world, and they hate people, and they hate society, and they've quit. And I don't really know the answer. I just know this. If you submit yourself to repetition over and over and over, and if you have the benefit of having a good coach, we don't all. I didn't have a coach at all when I was learning this initially. I was very much alone. But if you have that benefit, get one. But it's this way of learning and disciplining your mind to view the world in a positive way. What is the thing that I'm learning here when that obstacle is right in front of you? What's the thing that I am trying to be taught right now that I probably don't understand? And how can I learn it? How can I learn it quickly? And how can I carry something away from the situation that's positive that I can share with other people? That has been of a great benefit to me, because I'll be honest, there is some times that I just do not understand why things happen the way they did. It's like, wow, that's terrible, right? And I'm trying to find something to carry away that's positive, and I'm like, I really don't get it. But if I can train my mind, and years later, usually what will happen is I'll get somebody else and they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, I'm having this problem. What can I do? How do I get through this? And the reason that I have the answer is because I didn't have the answer then, and I didn't understand it then. And so what it's allowed me to do is to say, hey, I actually understand that. I actually understand how you feel right now. And there's nothing I'm going to be able to say that's going to make that better for you in this moment. But I will tell you this. The reason that I understand where you are and the reason that I'm able to pull you forward right now is because I walked where you walked. And so there's always a good side to things that we can find if our goal is to help and build others. If your goal is to help and build yourself and self-promote, and some of that's not going to make sense, especially when you get knocked backwards. But if your goal is to help others and be a servant leader, it's going to make a whole lot more sense and when those things happen. And that's kind of brings me into what we're talking about today. It's this belief-action gap. Belief-action gap. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, and it's totally up to you, you don't have to, totally up to you. But if you do, you will find I post a lot of things on there, a lot of different topics. And I recently shared this on LinkedIn. As leaders, we need to know our core beliefs so deeply that we can articulate them on the spot. Why do we do what we do? How do our actions align with creating value for our customers and our business? This is also in my book. It's one of the questions that I ask in a self-reflection. This is really, really important because I worked with a lot of people throughout the years, and they're like, I believe these things. And they do not believe those things. They fundamentally do not believe those things. And there are so many times people will say to me, leaders will say, like, yeah, we're going north or we're going south. And then they'll pack their bags and they will go the entire opposite direction. And I'm like, you have stated your beliefs, and we all heard you and we listened to you. And there's no way that that's what you believe, because a person who believes those things would not do the things that you're doing, right? And I hear this, I see this a lot with respect for people. You know, when we have when I travel different places and go to plants, I have a lot of people, you know, even from outside my day-to-day work, right? They call me and they'll say, hey, can you take a look at this and give me some thoughts on this? And I see a lot of posters and I see a lot of things that are up on the walls and things that are meant to inspire people and to get that alignment, right? But what I do find is that there is a misalignment there. There's a huge misalignment between the things that we say that we believe and the things that we do. And this, like, why does that matter? It matters immensely for all the reasons that I just told you, right? If I'm pursuing self-promotion, but I'm like, yeah, I'm really a servant leader and I want to, you know, pursue these things. And the moment that chaos hits and the moment that the frustration hits, you're going to break, because that's not actually what you were after. You're not trying to build relationships with others. You're not trying to serve other people. You're actually trying to serve yourself, and you're doing it. You're using the one as a mechanism to divert and cover from the other actual goal. So it's very important to ask these questions, like what is the thing I believe? And if you're a self-promoter and that's what you want money and fame and power, and that's fine. Just say that, though. Don't say that you believe something else, because what will happen is you'll be aiming for the other thing and everybody will know it. And what that does is it removes your authenticity. People will eventually land on the point and they'll say they are not an authentic leader. They say this, but they do this. And people are hungry for authenticity. And even if you have bad leadership principles, right? If you're honest to that, people will at least say you're authentic. There's a lot of leaders that I've had, and they've told us things that I'm like, wow, that was terrible, but that was extremely honest. I do actually believe that is exactly what they're doing, right? So you still at least you will keep your authenticity intact. But I do challenge as I talk about this, like, be honest with yourself about where you are. But be honest to yourself about where you'd like to go, because it's the gap in the middle. If you can close that gap, you can get where you're going. And it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to be able to wake up and say, oh, all of a sudden I love everybody and all of a sudden I care about, my people. That's probably not going to happen. But it's these, as your eyes are on that gap, you're going to continue to close that gap, and it becomes a little bit easier to solve, right? When we do this, when we align our leaderships or our beliefs with our behaviors, we can build cultures where people feel respected, even when performance conversations are tough. There have been very difficult conversations in my career, but I will tell you, we've managed to have these conversations and get to a good place. And even when I was learning this many, many years back, there's so many times that I've had to call and apologize to people and say, hey, you know what? you probably didn't see the best version of me the other day. And I'm sorry about that. And a lot of times you'll catch some of their anger because it wasn't the best version of yourself. But I will tell you this, what I have learned and what people have shared with me, they're like, he is trying, right? He is trying. And we're people. And that's why when I share this, these messages and these podcasts, like, you're going to make mistakes. I'll just save you the time. If let's eliminate the waste, right? You're going to make mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not stretching yourself far enough. And so the one is the evidence of the other. So it's a good thing if you're making mistakes. But when you make them, have the humility to fix them. And that's a really hard thing to do, but it will build that authentic leadership that so many people are hungry for. So this week, here's a couple questions you can ask yourself. What one process or habit is creating unnecessary chaos for my team right now? Simple question, right? As I look at my team, what habit or process? It could be, right, because processes are standards, are what we follow, but we have the behavioral side too. Some of it's habits, right? I'm used to doing it this way, and there are reasons I do that this way, but how am I observing that? How am I becoming aware of that so that I can engage with my team and make a difference with my team? Is there a way I can standardize the process in a way that empowers rather than controls? Empowers rather than controls. Now, this is the big question, because I'm a huge advocate for standards. Taiichi Ono said, where there's no standard, there can be no improvement. You have to have solid standards. And there are really three root causes to every problem. Standard does not exist, standard is not followed, or standard is not capable. So standards are extremely important as a foundational element of any transformation that you're going to do, right? So extremely important. Now, where I get the feedback from folks when we deploy standards is, one of the reasons that I like doing this job is because I get to use my creativity. And now you're telling me to follow a standard and my creativity's gone, so I'm not going to be able to use my creativity, and I don't like this job anymore. And it's because of you. It's because of your transformation. It's because of your standards, right? And here's what I've learned. This is what I learned from my sensei when I've asked these questions, and I was catching this feedback, and right? But here's why we standardize. There are many reasons, right? We do it to improve, but the creativity, the creativity trap, that I will call it that, right? People say, well, you're creating standards, you're stealing my creativity. When we create standards, when we create strong, reliable standards, what we do is we actually decentralize power. We're taking power from the higher places of the organization and we're decentralizing it into the matrix of the organization, or into these other subunits or other places where that decision could not have lived before. And when we don't have standards, power remains centralized. Why? Because if I'm a leader and I know that I understand how to make the right decisions, I will make them. But then my time will be consumed making decisions and not actually, forming strategy and doing the things that are important for me to do in the business from a Nemoto perspective, right? So when I think about this, and that's where the power lives. It lives at the top of the organization. But when I can create standards to where I know that if people follow the standards, then they're acting on my behalf and they're doing the things that I would do because they're following the standards that I would follow, I am now free as a leader to decentralize that power and unlock it to my teams and to my people. And this is how real transformation begins. We create the standards, we decentralize the power, and then what we have is a large exponential growth of leadership capacity that emerges throughout our enterprise, which is really, really powerful. And this is how, when I build these organizations, this is how I decentralize power and unlock the power. But the question is, well, that's great, that makes sense, that's wonderful, but what does that do for creativity? Well, now the creativity isn't used to create an array of processes or chaos, right, as I generally call it. But now the creativity is applied to solving problems. So now what is a problem? A problem is the gap between the standard and the actual condition, right? So my creativity is applied to the gaps now. And the reason that I understand the gaps is because the standard is now known and we have a standard process. And this is how I decentralize. This is how I build enterprise transformation. This is how I build these high performing teams that people ask me questions about all the time. And it's continually closing these gaps, and then that pushes the creativity back into the business. But the process is tough, right? Getting people to follow this and do this, the change is incredibly tough. I call it the messy middle, because that's exactly what it is. It's very messy, and it's in the middle of the organization. You're not, in the ivory tower. You're not, senior leadership that can just give orders and walk away. And you're not the doers either, that are actually doing the work. They're feeling that immense amount of frustration. You're actually generally you're the person in the middle, somewhere in the middle of that mess, that's trying to pull both sides together, and it's extremely difficult. But this is where respect for people shows up the strongest. It's not in slogans. It's how you handle failure, celebrate small wins, keep everyone focused on the customer's voice. Here's the thing that I'm hearing as I've released my new Audible book, and people are telling me they want practical, no fluff stuff, and I do try to share that, right? These are real lessons. These aren't things that I went out that somebody told me about. These are things that I learned. I learned them in very hard ways, and I try to share that information so that you can grab it real today. You can take this to work today, and you can have these thoughts on your mind. So as you're looking, and you might say, I don't have any of that where I go to work. I don't have any of that stability. It's pretty much all chaos. This is where I live. That's fine. That's fair. Been there, right? But what it hopefully is doing is it's starting to get you to look at your organization and say, but where might that start? Where might that fire start? And if I deploy that, where might it make sense? Where, okay, we're not going to do an enterprise transformation, but if I started this somewhere, where might I start? Where might I get the biggest benefit? What might my pushback be? Where might it come from, right? So you can start testing that. When I tried that, was it leadership that was mad at me? Was it the workers that were mad at me? Is it my peers? Who's upset, and what can I learn from these cultural observations, these implicit and explicit rules in the cultural surroundings that can help me begin to navigate and kill some of this chaos and get this out of your life, create some standardization and remove some of that variation. I want to thank you today for joining me on the Chaos Antidote. Remember, let's make tomorrow better than today by aligning your beliefs, your behaviors, and your team's efforts. This is Jason E. Neal. Stay intentional, stay grounded, and keep creating value in chaos. Until next time.